All right, welcome to Dinner for Two cooking today. Chef Warren Goodgall. We're gonna do a vegetable curry. All right, we have some great flavors today. So this is a great vegetarian dish. We always like to add meat into our dishes, but vegetables have such great flavors that we can get some great aromatic flavors out of the herbs we're gonna use today. And it's gonna be something really nice and easy, right? So what we're gonna do is I have my 10-inch skillet. We're gonna get it onto a medium-high heat, right? While waiting to preheat the pan, I'll quickly just go through some of the ingredients we're using today. We're going to preheat the pan for a couple of minutes. I've already prepared everything. So we have some mushrooms that are cut up. We're using a bit of cauliflower. We have some butternut squash. We're also using some onions, some zucchini. We have some cabbage. You know, cabbage is that great cancer preventer. Good to eat a lot of cabbage. We're going to put some butter beans in at the very end, some carrots, onions. We use a bit of ginger, garlic. We can use some jalapeno peppers. We have a great curry seasoning I put together. And it's just all these flavors are going to come together and just make something really fantastic, right? While the pan's preheating, I just wanted to talk quickly about a leek, right? So I have a leek here. Now a leek is a part of the onion family. One thing about a leek is you do have to make sure that it's cleaned properly, right? So when you have a leek, you want to basically, I've already opened this up and give it a clean, but you just want to slice it down the middle on both sides. Don't cut all the way through so the knuckle on the leek will hold everything together. It's very important that you open up the leek and rinse it under water to make sure that there's no sand, because the worst thing is to have sand in the dish. Right? So with this, leeks are something you can cut up very small into a dish. You can deep fry them. I also like having my leeks cut very large, right? Especially when it's a vegetarian dish and where what we're doing is all the ingredients, the main part of ingredients are all vegetables. So we're going to cut this up into a basically a large cut. I'm going to put this one, we don't need the knuckle anymore, right? And we got it on the go just like that, and that's how we're going to cut our leeks for this dish, right? Quickly, I'll go through as well the curry seasoning I put together. I'm using a little bit of bay leaf. I took some yellow curry powder, just a basic curry you'd buy in a store, but you know, we want to sort of enhance things. So I took that curry powder, and to that I added a half a teaspoon of cumin, ground cumin, a half a teaspoon of ground sage, a half a teaspoon of paprika, a half a teaspoon of dried ginger. We're going to put a bit of bay leaf in here as well, and that's also going to mingle with all the other flavors that we're using, right? So I'm just touching my pan, get it nice and warm. I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil into the pan, probably a couple tablespoons. What I'm going to do is we're going to use the oil to saute our vegetables, but we're also going to put a bit of flour into this dish to create a roux. Now, what that's going to do, the roux is going to be equal parts of flour and a fat. It's going to help us thicken the sauce, right at the end. So right in the pan, I've put into here my carrots, my onions. We have the celery in here as well. At this point, I'm going to throw in the ginger, the garlic, and the jalapeno. We're going to saute those off. We just want to sweat them a little bit so they become a little translucent to start leaching out some of those lovely flavors. So we can let that saute for about a minute or so. Just a little quick sweat. We don't want to brown anything for this dish. So quick saute, and then we're going to add a bit of flour and tomato paste to start making the base of the thickness of the sauce, right? So let the sweat about a minute or two, looking nicely. And then we'll let that cook for a minute and we'll get on the go here. All right, so I'm just grabbing some vegetable broth from the pantry. So we got that on the go now. Everything's sweating quite nicely here. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some of the herbs, right? So I have some rosemary, fresh thyme, and a little bit of fresh sage in here as well. Put that right into the pan. We're going to mix this up. Now, at this point, I'm going to add, you can really smell the flavors coming out. As soon as those herbs hit the oil, they start to sweat really nicely. So at this point, we're going to add a little bit of the flour. Now, I'm only going to put a couple tablespoons of flour in here, right? The flour is going to bind with the oil, right, that we put in the olive oil. Now, we're going to stir this up. Just mix it nice and evenly all the way around, right? Get a nice little mix like that. You can see it getting a little bit pasty. I'm going to add a little bit more flour than that. We're going to put another about 2.5 tablespoons of flour into the dish. Now, you don't want to walk away from this because the flour will start to burn, or just get really dark first before it does burn, which is nice flavors for different dishes, but we don't want that nutty flavor. So I'm going to add a little bit of the tomato paste, goes right into here. Quick stirring this up. Okay, it's looking good. Now, we're going to add a little bit of liquid. Now, with the liquid, you want to add a little bit at a time, because you want to bind this with the flour. Now you'll see, as soon as I put this in, you can see it's starting to thicken up really fast like that. Now don't worry about that. We're going to reduce this down. We're going to cook this stew. This is just going to help bind it a little bit towards the end. See, little bit by little bit. If you add all the liquid at one time, it'll separate and it won't become really nice and thick towards the end, okay? And that's looking nice just like that. Now I'm gonna add more liquid in, but at this point, what I'm going to do here is we're gonna add the curry seasoning that we put together. We'll put that right in there. We're going to add also the leeks and all the vegetables. So that goes right into the pan here. Okay, all the veg goes into the pot. Now, what I do with the Brussels sprouts, somebody asked me, are those gonna cook in a stew that fast, right? The trick to having Brussels sprouts cook quickly is you give a little slice down the stem, just opening it right inside there. And what that's gonna do to help cook the Brussels sprout a little bit faster, right? Oh, don't forget my bay leaves. Put the bay leaves in. Another little stir here. Get everything nicely mixed up. It's looking nice and yummy. Start to smell the curry powder. All right. We're gonna add some crushed tomatoes into this. So I have about 2 cups of crushed tomatoes go right into here as well. Give it another little mix. We're gonna add the rest of the vegetable broth. And then we're just gonna let this stew for about 20 minutes. It's a really fast, quick curry. I'm gonna put all this broth into here. I'm gonna finish it with just a little bit of coconut milk. Now the coconut milk into this dish isn't to give it a strong coconut flavor. It's just to give it a little bit of richness. Just to add a little bit of richness to the end of the dish. So we're gonna cook this down. I have it on my medium-high heat. As soon as, I'm gonna put the lid on in a second. As soon as the whistle goes off, what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn the stove down to that medium-low heat, let it cook for about 20 minutes, and we should be good to go. All right, so I'll put the lid on. Now the best thing about a cookware is to open that ready temp valve. The cookware is gonna call me when it's time to do the next thing, right? So let's go watch some TV or have a beer or play with the kids. That's a nice thing about cooking, is having enough time to do other things in the day, right? All right, you hear that? Our cookware calls you. So this is so fantastic to make cooking easy, because it's always easy greaseless, right? So what we're gonna do here, have a peek what's going on. We're gonna check the seasoning here, okay? Needs a bit of black pepper. I'm gonna put some black pepper in here. We're gonna put a little bit of salt in here as well. And then what I'm gonna do is add our butter beans in. Now the butter beans I'm gonna put towards the end. I'm not gonna put them in, and I'm only gonna leave them on the top so they don't break down too much. I am using some canned beans, and it's always nice to add beans, especially in vegetarian dishes, to add an additional protein, right? So legumes have lots of protein. You wanna incorporate that into the vegetarian dishes. I'm using a little bit of coconut milk, not very much. And then we're gonna give that a mix. Just like this. Try and keep those beans more on the top. We're gonna give this another like 3 or 4 minutes, and then we're gonna serve with our rice, right? So we have the rice ready to go. We have our stew ready to go. We'll give it basically when the whistle goes off again, we serve. All right, so it's whistling away. So I'm gonna shut this vent and shut this right off, and that looks good, right? So I have some rice that we cooked earlier. So this rice is already cooked. Our cooker retains heat so fantastically. It's still nice and warm. So we're gonna plate this up with a bit of rice. So what I'm gonna do, a nice little trick, again, if you want it to be nice and fancy, is to take some rice and you can put it into a container. You can use like a small dessert bowl. I'm using the measuring cup here, and basically press it in nice and firm. And this is just great, something just great again for presentation, you know? You don't need to be a professional chef to have great food and have great looking food, right? So we're gonna put this right here, give it a little bit of a shake, and it comes right out of there, right? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna serve up the curry, right? Now, this is looking amazing. Such great flavors. And let's get this all served up nicely here. So we get everything out of the pot. Look at those colors. You know, it's all about incorporating the great flavors and just using the right ingredients to get the best out of your foods, right? And make sure that everybody can see all the ingredients that you've used, which is really quite nice. So display it right on the plate really nicely. And there we have a lovely vegetable curry with some steamed rice. And that's the way we like to do it at Dinner for Two. And that's Chef Warren. Life is delicious.